Hello, everybody. I'm going to give it a sound check here, see if sound's working. We still have about 4 or 5 minutes left before we actually get started. Sound check 1 2. Sound check 1 2, please. Perfect. Thanks, CC. Give me just about, let's call it a minute and a half, and I'll be right back. Okay. Wow, crazy markets, huh? Not really so much Bitcoin, but stock market's been a bear. Wild up and down, volatility. Crazy. Fact, let's go ahead and I know everybody wants. We'll talk about Bitcoin too, but I know that everybody's wanting to, and we'll start here in just a few minutes. But I'm going to pull up the S&P 500 just real quick. These moves are just. I would say I'm shocked, but I'm not. I've seen it before. You get so much volatility, and that's where you get these big moves. I mean, you had this big steady up trend right here, and then boom. So all right, we're getting closer to 7 o'clock. I'll go ahead and get started a little bit. The S&P 500, and you guys can see the chart, everything's good sound wise. Okay. But anyway, obviously the COVID-19 or coronavirus, it's put a lot of fear in the market. But I think we've seen that maybe, and I'm not bringing politics into this, but it does play a part. And so when you top coronavirus on top of Bernie Sanders getting a lot of support, and no, I'm not bashing the guy, right? But his policies and what he was proposing was not good for a market, right? Even though he's not president, the thought of him being the Democratic candidate was putting a lot of fear on top of the coronavirus. And so you get this big steep incline and everybody's panicked, and you can blame it on what you want to, but I think today was one of those days that we had Super Tuesday yesterday, and when people realized that Sanders was not going to be the nominee, hey Mast, how you doing? It looks more and more like Biden will be. Big move here today, right? And one of the leaders was United Healthcare. And I think not only that, but China's got things semi under control. South Korea's got things semi under control. And they can come out with all the numbers they want to, and I know it can spread, and there's not a vaccine for, they say a year, but we're going into warmer months, and we're really going to find out how powerful this thing is. Now, that doesn't mean 2 or 3 months down the road, the thing doesn't, spread, and there's going to be more and more people infected. But to me, I just think it's blown way, way out of proportion. I think a lot of this had to do with just, a combination of things. And really, when you look at the markets themselves, or at least the stock market, let's just go look at a monthly chart, and I think that tells the story, really. This is just not sustainable without getting a correction, right? We saw this big correction back here after an extended move up, one here, higher, and the market just kept rejecting and pulling higher despite bad news, or the treasury rates being so low. So, there was advanced warning that something like this was coming. I didn't see it. I was paying too much attention to Bitcoin. But, this right up here, there's no doubt that's a reversal pattern. So despite the move that we're getting right now, I can fully expect that this thing is probably going to go lower and correct even more, which it needs, right, to be a healthy market. So that's when I was talking about ugly on the S&P, and this is a monthly chart, right? So we could be up, and come all the way up here before this thing finally craters, right, and comes down lower. But then again, the Fed is starting to pump more liquidity into the system, which it really doesn't need. And so when you try to fight the Fed, they always find ways to try to get the thing higher. And so, it's just, I hate to call it like that, but I never saw as much liquidity put in the system as I'm seeing right now, despite the stock market doing what it's doing, right? If we was to scroll back, to the dot-com crash, and this was all the way back here, interest rates were around 6%, if I'm not mistaken. And so the Fed had plenty of room to stave this off, right? And they started cutting rates right in here, and it took a full, year and a half. It took a year and a half before that finally kicked in, and then you got the rally, and then you had the financial crisis, and they cut rates back here too. But now we've cut rates, and we're almost to zero, folks. Almost to zero. So if something drastic happens within the market, they have no way to be able to stave this off, right? They had plenty of room here to lower interest rates. And if they're going to lower interest rates, I think it's in a week and a half or 2 weeks from now, if they lower them again, they have no room to go. So anyway, that's enough, talk about the S&P. Let's go ahead and go back to the daily chart, and let's go over to Bitcoin. Sorry. Okay, and here's what we got on the futures chart. Basically, this trend line that I've been talking about is held so far. And that's what you have to watch. Anything below this, and we're probably coming down to 8,000. That's just my view. But right now it's doing a nice job of holding it. EMAs are all bunched together. I want to see follow through, and I want to see it get above 9150, 9200. That's where I want to see it get above. Squeeze indicator is still short. Okay, so we always have to pay attention to that. And until we get some sort of, one of these yellow histograms that tells us that the short side is losing momentum, then we still have to be on guard for that. Okay, and you still have, you got the 200-day moving average still above. You got the 10, the 20, but it's holding the 50. Okay, and it's above the 100. So that's what we're going to be watching for. Slow stochastics are getting, down here into oversold. But we've seen it right here where it can be oversold and still drop a little bit more. This time right here was actually the bottom right there. So what I would like to see is a rally and then a retest and then bounce higher from there. But I would much prefer, though, that it just break through 9,200 right now. But we'll see what the market brings. Let's go over to the regular chart, and I'm going to change my cursor. Does anybody have any questions so far, at least on the S&P or what I talked about on Bitcoin? Any questions? All right, so this is the Coinbase exchange, and it's going to be similar to a lot of other exchanges. But as I talked about back here, we had advanced warning, right? Something, bearish engulfing, bearish engulfing, bearish engulfing. And then you get this move right here. Now, there's 3 black crows on this chart, right? And 3 black crows is these 3 candlesticks. Normally, in a pattern like this, you're going to retrace about half of that. And then you're going to see if it extends or continues in the original pattern or trend that it was going. So this could be nothing more than just a counter trend move. Okay, it may only hit the 38.2 and then reverse down. And the thing we have to watch for is this a head? Is this a shoulder? And are we coming up and forming a right shoulder? Okay, that's the bearish case. Okay, and I always try to look at both sides. As much as a bullish person that I am, I always have to look at any possibilities, right? And this is taking on the shape, a potential shape of a head and shoulders pattern. And this would be your neckline. Here to here, okay? So we're going to have to watch this over the next few days. But, I really, really would like to see Bitcoin get above 9,200 and start taking out some of these Fibonacci retracements. We got a big time bullish reversal pattern right here. This trend was obviously down. Red stick here, doji, perfect doji, indecision. And then the next day it just took out that red stick. So that's a good reversal pattern. And then we had this this red candle, doji, today. And now we're potentially, this candle's not going to close until tomorrow, but potentially could reverse again to the upside, right? So there's a lot of mixed signals going on right now with Bitcoin. I think the overall trend is still up. And until this trend line breaks, you can be bullish, in my opinion. But just be wary of the potential pattern that might develop here, okay? You always have to look at both sides. You can't look at just bullish, just bearish. You have to look at both sides, okay? And be aware of those and play accordingly, okay? Doing a nice job of holding the 200 day moving average right here in blue. Still need to get, that 10 EMA is right there, and it's been rejecting it, rejected it here, here, and right now that's where we're at, okay? So the 10 EMA is at 89.20. That's an area to watch, but it still has the 233, which I think if it breaks the 10, it probably pops right through that and comes up here into the 90.87 to 91.20 area. And then you still have the 38.2. So there's tons of resistance. I'm not sure what a catalyst would be to be able to take this thing higher. Obviously, the coronavirus and all that stuff could still lead to a downside. So let's see. Do I expect any rally going into happening? Mass? Yeah, I do, actually. I mean, and I pinned this on my Twitter post, right? And I'll just go to a weekly chart. This is what I saw happening, right? And this was all based on symmetry in a market, right? So if you take, and this is a weekly chart, if you take this low that we had in December of 2018, it took 28 bars or 196 days or 344% to be able to get up to here. Okay? So we went from 3150 almost 10 or a little over 10,000 points higher. Now, if we're looking at symmetry and we're saying that this over here is the low, and if this pattern right here is going to equal this move, then we can expect that by June, if the patterns are going to, do the same thing, then by June we could be up around 17,000. Okay, and that's toward, what is that? The end of, June 22nd. Okay, so that's just a symmetry move. Equal days, equal price. Okay, that's what I'm looking at, and that's what I posted. And as long as we can hold right here around 8,300 and not break that, then maybe we get that next move. Still a lot of resistance to get through, and especially this downtrend line. And that's why I think if we break this downtrend line, that will propel it a lot higher. And you could see FOMO like you haven't seen before. So that's the weekly chart. And I could be totally wrong, right? This thing could just go all the way back down to the 200-day moving average. And that's going to be around, 5,600. I'm not expecting that. Not expecting that. Let's see. Fabio, could I take a look at the 4-hour? Yes, I can. Absolutely. Let's go over here and look at the 4-hour. Okay. And so you could have, I don't know if I would just call that a double bottom. It's not really an inverted head and shoulders, right? But it's basically a double bottom and a hit off the trend line almost perfectly. And then comes up and tests the 50 EMA. So again, much like we're trying to get past the 10 EMA on the daily, we're trying to get past the 50 EMA on the 4-hour chart. So, break above this area and you might get the Bollinger Bands expanding out. I do like how it didn't come all the way into oversold. It's kind of holding this area and trying to go higher, right? So, still a lot of stuff to chew through, but we know the areas that you have to get through to be able to extend this thing, okay? Right there's one. That's 89.77. Obviously, this high, and if it can take it out, then we can expect a move possibly up to 9,200. All right, any questions? Let me refresh that chart. And there we go. Sorry, I had to refresh that chart because sometimes it'll get blurry based on the stream and some of the stuff I have open. Let me close this, see if that'll free up a little. There we go. Maybe that'll help. All right, so any questions about that, guys? Yeah, 50 EMA is holding as a resistance, right? It's right there. That's the green line. That's the 50 EMA. So that's holding as a resistance. Even if it breaks it, you got the upper Bollinger Band right up here, resistance here, resistance here. Okay? So we just have to keep that in mind. Any break above this area, and then it's free running up to 9,200. Yeah, to me it does. Short term, I would obviously like to. I just don't know that this thing is going to just totally blast off from here. I'm expecting just kind of choppiness. I do expect to get to 9,200, but after that, probably a pullback, and then let's see if we can just hold the area. Maybe this is our area of resistance. Let's go up here and hit the 38.2, come back and retest 9,000, and then go higher from there. It's all about retesting a prior resistance zone, which should be support. If that makes sense. right? So on a 4-hour chart, just do this. Take your horizontal ray and just do something like that. Okay? And then, of course, I'm going to change it to red because that'll tell me it's a resistance. But you can see it, right? It's pretty obvious to see this area right here. Okay? All right. Any other questions about that? All right. So anyway, let's go look at just a couple of other things real quick and things I've noticed. I mentioned a while back, I said keep an eye on Link. And, I think it was back in here. I can't remember where I mentioned it, but this thing was flagging right here. It made a nice reversal off the lower Bollinger Band, but then came through the 10, the 20, and the 50, and then came back and retested the 10, and it was like a flag pattern, and then this thing just blasted off higher. It made a marginal high just right over here above resistance. I want to be really careful up here to make sure this isn't like some sort of, throw over, just to, get past it, and then all of a sudden it comes right back down. But Link looks strong. That's a 4-hour chart. Let's go look at it on a daily. And again, you can see, right there, that's a major reversal pattern, right? It was in a downtrend, up, confirmed, flag pattern, and then higher. So looks like it still has some room to go. But again, I just want to make sure that this right here is not just some clear the stops out of people that are, short and then go lower, right? And then just catch everybody off guard. You catch longs trying to FOMO in and then do the quick reversal on this thing. So just keep an eye on your 10 EMA. If you're looking to buy it on a retrace, that's your area. Just watch it, right? So it should hold, or at least the 10 and the 20. But that's Link. XTZ is looking like it's trying to get ready. Oh, well, thanks, Mast. I appreciate it. It's probably, there's probably so many people that just pump stuff just to pump it. I'm going to call it like it is either way. If I don't like it, I don't like it. And if I do, even though I'm a bull, right? I'm a bullish person. But I'm not going to sit there and just, try to pump everybody into something. If I want to be cautious, I'll be cautious. That's like, when I put out a red alert, I don't put those out just for giggles and grins or showtime. That's just major be on alert. Possible reversal, possible breakthrough, support. You just have to be on guard. Anyway, back to XTZ. It was bearish back here, but, that's a pullback, right? This thing had a nice run up, and all it did was come back to the 127.2 retracement from here, or a 50%, close to 50% retracement. Yeah, pump more. Yeah, buy XTZ, buy Link, buy DGB, buy Bitcoin, yeah, whatever. But the thing about XTZ is that, this thing's got a pretty nice following behind it, and they apparently have a really good project going. So people are looking, and the smart people looking to buy it on retraces, right? And that's what happened here. Lower Bollinger Band, close to a fib cluster, and holding well above the 50 EMA. And then now it's back above the 10 and the 20. I talked about that last night when price was, I think it was back in here. It hadn't even made that green stick. And I was like, watch this one, because if you can get above the 10 and the 20 EMA, that'll propel it forward. And that's what's happening right now. So now what do I want to see on XTZ? Well, I want to see it come back and retest the 10 and just make sure that that's going to be support. And if it is, then XTZ is going a lot higher. It's going, probably up here to retest the highs, and maybe even higher than that. So Anyway, that's what you want to do. You want to pay attention to this one, at least for the midterm. Things are just really looking really good on this one. Let's go ahead and take a look at DGB. This is one I made the call and channel on. And it got scary there for a little bit, but basically all it did was a double bottom. Held the trend line, still in this falling wedge, right? You can see this, still in this falling wedge. And now are we going to get that move up here to test the upper portion? And are we even possibly going to get through this support? Get above the 50 EMA, all right? And even better, let's do this. I'm going to zoom in. But getting past the 10 EMA was nice. It's battling, you can see where it rejected off the 50 EMA. But let's get these things curling around and then maybe get up and test, maybe even a little higher than this. Maybe get up around 73 to 75 and then come back and test the 10 EMA, because hopefully by that time it will have crossed the 20 and then we really get things going, right? So you saw it back here, busted through the 10, busted through the 20, resistance at the 50, and then by that time the 10, the 20 have crossed, and you're coming back and retesting it as support to go higher. So still a lot of energy to work with here. And as we've seen, it can go, overbought we've seen that numerous times with other stuff too. But just because it's overbought or oversold doesn't mean it has to immediately bounce or drop. So we're going to watch that and keep an eye on it. I do like the fact of this candle right here. You can see where it has the long wick coming out the top. We know that this is going to be resistance, right? But the fact that bears could not close this red, and it's a green stick, green body, that just means that buyers still have control for now. But I do want to see the 68 to 69 area. I want to see that hold. That's what I want to see hold on DGB. So, all right, so that's DGB. What else do you guys want to look at? I'm open. Chart requests, please. Chart requests or RVN. Okay. Let's go look at it. Got it right there. Okay. I'm sorry to laugh. I mean, but RVN, and we've talked about this one numerous times before. But, you see the support line right here. It's got support just under it as well. So would you not want to, of course, I'm watching too many things, especially with the market going on, the way the stock market and all that stuff. Would it have not made sense to just buy RVN right here around 280 or 283? Support, 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 and even further back, support. So your risk, if you bought it at 280, and I should have put a call in the channel on this one. I wish I had seen it. But it's just typical. You see support, bounce, chop, 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 drops all the way back down, support, bounce, support, big bounce, and we're right here. And if you zoom in, and this is why I love candlestick patterns, see, big drop from almost 400 sats all the way down, and you get this big red stick right here where my mouse is. See the doji after it hits support, and then you see the next day big green stick that overtakes that red stick. So if somebody was shorting this, they're trapped, right? If they didn't have a stop loss. You didn't get a perfect follow through the next day, but it did on a retrace. It held support. it did not go below this low. And now you see what happened today, and you get a bearish engulfing candlestick pattern right here after that small red stick. Okay? So again, not trying to sound like a broken record, but coming up here and testing the 50 EMA, or I'm sorry, the 20, actually sitting right on the 20, tested the 50 over here. What you want to see now is when it comes back down, and it can wick a little bit below the 10. That's not a big issue. I just don't want to see it close below it. So give it a few sats in here, but hold this little area right in here, and you may come up and find yourself at 331 before you know it, and maybe even 341. But just knowing that your risk on the downside is if you get a close below the 10 EMA. And we can also do some, let's go ahead and do this. We can do some fib retracements on the upside. Take it from here to the high, down to the low, okay? And then let's go ahead and put our numbers in there. 38.2 right there, 23.6, which it's already passed, so we take that out. And let's throw in a 1.272, and there you go. And it's rather amazing where the 200-day moving average is, right where the 38.2 is. So 331 seems to be the magical number. Okay? So if you're buying it here, just know that you want to, maybe it could possibly retrace back to the 10, and then you maybe get your move up to the 331 sat area. Okay? I don't know what your risk is, but this little area right in here will probably be some, tougher resistance, but then watch your fib retracements, right? But just going off previous patterns on this thing, now the lows have been getting, or the highs have been getting lower. Okay, I want to mention that. You had a high here, lower high, lower high. Okay, so top on this one possibly at the 61.8. That would be 360, or the 78.6 at 381. Those are just areas you want to, this area right in here between those two is possibly where, if you're long, just following the trading plan. Get your original capital out, take some profits, and then just let the rest ride. And if it decides it wants to crater again, just know your buy area is down in here. This is your buy zone. Okay, your buy zone's down in here. All right, so let's go look at ETH, and I'm working my way down, Adam. I'll get to you on algo here in just a second. Let's go to ETH, Ethereum. Okay, and so we've already got I got a fib retracement in there. 235 has held as resistance right here. And again, big time reversal pattern here, and we got a doji. I want to say today. This candle here is actually for tomorrow, but again, we've talked about it before. Just like I did on XTZ, watch your 10, watch your 20. If it pops through those, then you could get a bigger move. Okay. Your area to watch on the downside is obviously going to be right this fib cluster down here. That's, let's just call it 204 to 205. Right now almost seems to be kind of like a no man's land, if you want to put it that way. It's holding the 50, but it's below the 10 and the 20. All right. So this is just choppy, chewing everybody up until it decides whether it wants to go higher or if it wants to drop lower. Okay, I'm not sure I would be placing big bets on this, as it could go either way. But you could obviously play the breakout if it happened, right? You're getting above the 38.2 is going to put you past the 10 and the 20. So anything above 236, that's probably, you could buy that, and you're probably going to get a pretty good sized bounce on that. to take it to 252 and possibly even up here around 262. So a lot of people are just, to me, the way I'm looking at it, if I was risking it, okay, and I'm not saying this just because I'm a bullish person, but I'm just looking at the reversal pattern right here and reversing off the 50 EMA and your lower Bollinger Band just seems to tell me, and looking at where the stochastic RSI is, which is staying in oversold, just tells me that this thing is coiling up for a run higher. Okay, I could be totally wrong, but that's what I'm expecting. Okay, so that is ETH. Any questions? All right, let's go to Algo USD. Pull up there we go, Algo. Okay, this one's okay, and this is one that could go either way as well. It did break, and I'm gonna actually let me change this because the fibs are all wrong. There we go. All right, so it broke the 38.2. We'll get that out of there. And basically testing the 50% retracement. Here's the deal on this one is when I'm looking at this, what I'm seeing is head, shoulder, possible shoulder. Okay, I talked about this earlier. You have to be aware of possibilities, okay? This may not be a head and shoulders, but you have to keep in the back of your mind and just know and have your stop losses, right? That's what those are there for. And this is your neckline down here. So if I was to do something like this, let me just get let's just do a trend line on it. Okay, and let's do something like that. Okay, that's your neckline. Okay, head, neck, shoulder, possible shoulder. Okay, and this could still go a little bit higher, right, up here before it actually forms that shoulder. So it could actually go to 43, but the thing is too is that this thing has if you go all the way back here to early February, the 10 and the 20 have not crossed each other, right? It tried right here, but it never crossed. So that's a bullish sign. Obviously, this big breadstick right here, that's a bearish engulfing. That is bearish, right? So you had the trend, broke out of it. That'll take out this high and eventually get you up here and you make new highs. So the 10 and the 20 are actually, holding this thing up. I would just be watching the 10 and the 20, and if it breaks below those, then you know something else is going on. Okay? Just got to be careful. I mean, these markets are real tricky right now. Okay, next chart or questions? Yeah, my pleasure, Adam. Glad I could help. All right, let's go back to... All right, so what is everybody else's thoughts on coronavirus? Deep. Yeah, let me take a look. I'll go back to it real quick. Went ahead and covered it. So basically, I've been talking about this trend line, and I put the red alert out right in here, okay? Because we were approaching the trend line, okay? We were outside Bollinger Bands, and the thinking was that this area would hold, right? And lo and behold, we get a nice reversal pattern. If I zoom in, okay, and I'll zoom in for you. We had, hints going on up here, right? At the top. We had bearish engulfing right as we were wanting to, we had a bullish engulfing right here, but then price could not make we had 2 days where it couldn't make a higher high. That's alert number 1. Alert number 2 is when you see the bearish engulfing candlestick pattern right here, okay? And then we get this big stick right here and thinking, okay, now we're on our way back up, only to have another bearish engulfing. So somebody was selling hard up in this area, and they'll still be there when this thing turns around. But we had advanced warning, okay, and not once, not twice, 3 times, 3 bearish engulfings. And then we've got this, it's called a 3 black crows is what it's called. And this is basically a continuation pattern of the downtrend, right? That's just confirming that this downtrend is real, right? So there you go. We come lower, we make lows, we hit the trend line, and now we get the bullish reversing candle off of it. So what this is telling me is that normally 3 black crows will retrace about 50% of that move, right? So that's going to put it somewhere up in here, maybe a little bit lower. So we could get up into the 90, I'm going to call it like 93 to 9,500, that area. We need to watch really closely, and I'm expecting it to probably get up there. But that's my expectation. To really see it happen, you want to see it get past the 10 EMA, which is right here in blue. Okay? We're still in a downtrend. Despite this move right here, at least for the short term, still in a downtrend. But the 10 EMA is the driver of all things, right? Right here, this blue line. So even on this big day here, it tagged it and reversed off of it. And all we're doing tonight is coming up here and retesting it again, and that's at 89.10. Okay? So we want to get above that and then come up here and take out this high, right? Get above 9,000, and we're probably coming up, and I would say, this little red stick right here at the top of that's probably going to be resistance as well, 93.72 in that area, right? So this is it's gonna take a little bit to get through this. I mean, unless just some fantastic news came out, and and that's what you get. But I also pointed out, and algo was the same way. Okay, we have a potential head right up here. Okay, and we have a potential shoulder, left shoulder, right over here, because I have to look at both ways. I can't look just totally on the bullish side. I have to look at other ways too to protect my capital. But potential shoulder over here, and if this thing comes up and retraces this 3 black crows, then you have another shoulder potential right here. Okay? And then I'm going to draw a trend line. That would be the neckline. Okay? Just like that. So anything below here, okay, we're going to, if we break this trend line, then we're definitely breaking this right here, in my opinion. And we take out the low, and then we're coming all the way down. And to fulfill a head and shoulders pattern, you basically just take it from one shoulder to the high, and then take that distance and extend it down. So if this thing breaks to the downside, it could get really ugly. Okay? I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying we have to be prepared that might happen. I don't think it will, but I just have to look at both ways. So if you're one of those that likes to short Bitcoin, you've got some hope. But if you're long Bitcoin, you got some hope as well. I mean, we're dicey here, guys. I mean, this is the 200 and the 233-day moving average right in here. Get above and blow past this, right? I really want to see Bitcoin get past. Oh, I would just say this: if it gets past 9,700, then game on. And maybe my 17,000 prediction by late June will start looking better. Oh, deep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, some could take this right here, the reversal pattern, and play it. And maybe some did. And maybe this is a flagging pattern right in here, right? But it's doing a nice job of holding this big green stick right here. All this is just inside of it. Okay? That's just inside of that green candle. That's just... that's just pure choppiness, but it's holding the short-term bullish reversal. Get above this red line right here at 89.93, and I think you come up and obviously test 92.20, possibly 9,300, and then who knows, maybe 9,500. But then I would be really cautious of this area right up here, 9,500, because of the potential of that head and shoulders. So we have to watch that area, and that'll, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen it's probably a few days away. Maybe by this weekend we'll know better. So we're staying cautious. All right. Any other questions or chart requests? Guess I can go ahead and take a look at XRP real quick. And again, similar pattern as to everything I've pretty much talked about. There's the 10 EMA acting as resistance. We saw it back here, and you can just see what happens. I mean, you get above the 10, you test the 20, fall right back down, get past the 10 and the 20, come back and retest, and that leads you to higher prices. We're not there. Okay? We're just not there. We got the signs that it could potentially happen, but we're not there yet. Okay? We're not there yet. Protect your capital. Don't FOMO. You're not going to miss anything. Okay? Everything, even when it breaks out, if it's really bullish, it'll come back and retest a zone, and then you get in. Bitcoin Art Guy. Hi there. How you doing? Thanks. Yeah, I did look at Algo. I'll go over it again real quick. And it's pretty much the same as, and not the same as Bitcoin, but just some patterns I'm watching, okay, just to be on the safe side, because I'm a bullish person by nature, but I have to look at both sides, right? I try to protect my capital, and so I always try to look at a bearish side just in case. But even though this one looks, we had a very bearish pattern right up here, bearish engulfing candle, drop lower, but then, what was this? March 2nd, a couple of days ago. You get this reversal pattern out of your downtrend, and the 10 never crossed the 20, right? And it hasn't done so since this thing really got going back in, late January, early February. And so the 10 never crossed through the 20, and things just, this thing popped right back through, and then lo and behold, it came back and retested the 20 right there. And so now it's trying to pop higher. That's a bullish sign, right? We like that. That's a bullish sign. But to be on the safe side, I'm looking at a potential head, shoulder, and a potential shoulder up in this little area right up in here, around 43 cents. This would be your neckline. Okay, that would be your neckline. So as long as price holds this area, and I would say even more for the short term, holding above the 10 and the 20 EMAs, that is going to be key for algo. Okay. Now this thing could just take off and blast higher and make new highs, but I don't know that for sure. I really don't. I'm looking at areas that it needs to get past, and I would say the big one is going to be up here at 46 cents. Break above that, and you're like 99% chance of breaking new highs. Right now, all it's trying to do is hold the EM past 43 and then take out that potential right shoulder. There is a pattern to it, and I will show you. So if you take a look at your volume, and this really actually, now that you mentioned that, and thank you for reminding me, this probably negates it, to be honest with you. So the way head and shoulders patterns work is when you go into the left shoulder, that is normally going to be the highest volume that you will have. And thank you again for pointing that out to me. I knew I was forgetting something. So I may just get off that whole head and shoulders pattern deal. But the left shoulder is going to be the highest volume of the pattern. Okay? And then you go into the head, and that's going to be decreasing volume. And then your right shoulder is going to be the lowest volume of the pattern. No, Art, thank you so much for bringing that up. That actually negates everything I said, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I knew I was forgetting something. I was like, okay, something doesn't seem right, but I was like, okay, it looks like it could be a head and shoulders. But no, that's how it works, though. In fact, let's go back. Let's go back here, okay? Let's go back, and I'll show you a perfect example. Okay, and here we go with Bitcoin. Okay, and it may be hard for you guys to see it, but this was the inverted head and shoulders. Okay, so you notice volume on this shoulder was the highest it got, right here. Lower volume on the head at a lower price, even lower volume on the right shoulder. Right there. And then once it broke the neckline, you can see what happened. Okay? Thank you so much, Art, for bringing that up. I totally appreciate that. So anyway, yeah, so now that makes me feel better about algo. Okay. Still has resistance to get through, but at least we don't have to worry too much about, the whole head and shoulders thing, because volume was down here, got actually higher into the head, and then this one's not, so yeah. It's not a perfect head and shoulders whatsoever. Doesn't fit the technical. It just looks like it, but it doesn't fit it. See, I can make mistakes. I'm allowed. All right. What else can we look at? What was I looking at earlier? XRP. Oh, wait. Let's look at EOS for a second. I would have to go back and look at the dates. I mean, EOS looks almost similar. I mean, right? Had the inverted head and shoulders like Bitcoin did. This thing just trades right along with Bitcoin. It really does. But somebody mentioned either online in the Discord channel or maybe it was in a live stream that EOS seemed like a leading indicator for Bitcoin, but I don't buy that. I think it's the other way around, but I could be wrong. But EOS, just chopping around right here needs that above that 10 EMA. That's the whole key. Going back and checking in on Bitcoin, I would love to see it hold the 200-day moving average. That would be nice. Closed above it today, closed above it yesterday. Would love to see it hold that 200-day moving average on a closing basis. So it's in a major chop zone right now. All right, so a little bit of, and this is going to be more for Ancient, who's in our Discord channel. He had a question, and for those of you that play the stock market or you play stuff that's less than $5, he had a question about reverse splits. Okay, and any of you that were looking at that and had the same question, and you were wondering, well, what does it mean? Does it help me? Does it hurt me? I will only tell you from experience, okay? And I learned about this in the late 90s, and it was hard. It was when I was so green. I fell in love with a company called Rentec. And, they had this fantastic technology that was going to change the oil industry and whatnot, but they would reverse split their stock. Well, here's what happens, and there's several different ways it could happen, is that, and sometimes it's good, not very much, probably about 2% of the time, but what happens is when you get a company and they issue shares, okay, to the public buys those shares, and the money comes back to the company. Okay? They could also sell what's called convertible shares. There's different types, but basically all they do is issue shares, right? And so let's just say your outstanding shares is, and I'm just using this as an example, 100,000 shares. That's not very many shares. But let's just say that 3 months later, hey, guess what? I've got Joe Blow that is interested, and I'm going to sell him 10. I'm going to put 10 more thousand out there, but this guy is going to be able to get a special rate on his shares, and he could sell those later at a certain price. All right? Convertible debentures is basically the death of a stock, because what happens is you issue all these shares, you give Joe Blow or whoever's that investing in your company special privileges, and then all of a sudden you keep issuing shares, and then you eventually get to where your stock goes stagnant because you have so many shares out there that price will not move because you do not have the volume to be able to move it. Okay? And so what companies will do, their price may sit there at $3 for the longest time, And then all of a sudden they'll be like, you know what? We're going to reverse split. Okay. And they could do a 1-to-3, 1-to-2, however they want to do it. Most people do 1-to-2. But that just means that you're taking, if I had 5,000 shares of Rentec and price is at $3 and they do a 1-to-2 reverse split, then price is going to go up to $6, but I have less shares. I have 1/2 of the shares I had before. And so now the whole process starts again. Issue more shares, issue, price stays stagnant, and then they do the same thing over and over and over again. It's not a good situation to be in. They're trying to capitalize their company through selling shares or putting shares out on the stock market. Okay? Been through it before. If you ever see a reverse split, something that's announced as a reverse split, it may help like the day after. It may help for a few days, but I would just plan on getting the hell out. Reverse splits are the death of a stock. So, anyway, didn't mean to rant, but that's my experience from the 90s. Okay. Any other questions? Chart requests? I need to go look at Litecoin. Let's go take a look at it. Haven't gone over it tonight. And pretty much the same thing. All right? Big reversal pattern. Couple of inside days right here. Question is, will this be an inside day or will this be the one that takes it higher? Today and tomorrow are going to be key days. I'll put it out that way. I don't see it going, sideways for 3 days, 3 or 4 days. Usually you get something like this on an inside day. That's just a retracement back to the 200. It's either going to just have a red stick and break right through it, or this thing is going to pop higher. So I'm leaning higher. But we know what we need to get through. We need to get through the 10 EMA. Fabio, I could tell you a lot of stories about my experiences in the market. I could tell you a lot. And it was rough, I'll tell you. When I got started in 1997, and it was rough. It was really rough. I didn't know a thing about charts. I didn't know a thing about this or that. I just thought the stock market always went up, which over the long term it does, but I never knew about, reverse splits or convertible debentures or options or futures. I didn't know anything about that stuff. But I had to learn quickly, and I had a couple of good friends help me out. So it was, thank God they were there, but it still took time. And I still make mistakes, right? I mean, if I wasn't making mistakes, nobody is perfect, guys. Best books on trading and the markets. Okay, so there is one that I'll type in the channel real quick. It's Message of the Markets by Ron and Sana. And I'll throw in another resource for you as well. Give me 1 second, I'll pull it up. Let's see. And then here's a fantastic resource for you. Stockcharts.com. A lot of good learning material in there. It'll show you candlestick patterns. It'll show you And I think you can actually get, you might be able to get some free charts out of that as well. It's pretty low priced. Okay, it's not too bad, but it's a nice one to have. It really is, and there's a lot of good information in there. Message of the Markets by Ron and Sana, though, really delves into, basically it's the, and I look at this and I talk about it too, about hints. It's almost like message. What's the message of the market, right? So you can look at a candlestick pattern, or you can look at some patterns. There's always somebody, okay? And nobody's going to be able to convince me otherwise. There's always somebody that knows what's going to happen because they're an insider, right? Whether it's a stock, crypto, company, somebody always knows what's going to happen. And usually that'll show up on a chart, right? Or it'll show up in mutual funds, right? You get some big hedge fund that comes out and, they're sitting there secretly buying, behind the scenes, hey, buy 10,000 of that, buy 20,000 of that, because I know somebody on the inside that they're going to have good earnings, right? So what do? They get in well ahead of everybody else, okay? And when the news actually comes out and stock drops, people are going, well, wait a second, they had great earnings. It's like, well, yeah, because they sold right into you. Okay? And it's just like when I was trading options, especially like when I was doing it full time, I found it rather interesting, okay, is that I could sit there and look at, and let's just say, just for an example, let's say it's Microsoft. And let's just say it's the day that they're going to report earnings, the very day. And they don't report until after the market closes, okay? Keep that in mind. I could sit there and look at the options, and I swear to God, it would be like 2 minutes before the market closes, and all of a sudden you see some weird, stupid trade in the options market that you just go, well, that was kind of weird. And then all of a sudden it would be like they bought, let's just say, a bunch of calls, right? That they think that the price is going to go higher. And it's some weird bet. And you're like, okay, well, that's way out of the ordinary. And then all of a sudden after the market closes, guess what? Microsoft reported great earnings. I mean, it just had to make you sit there and go, really? I mean, it's almost like, how does the SEC not patrol that? I thought we had laws and, and stuff in place for that, but apparently not. I mean, Wall Street is still ruled by the big boys. They're gonna get your money. They're gonna screw you over any way they can. They want the little guy out of the market. That's why. Back when I was trading early on, I could, nowadays you have to have, if you want to day trade in the stock market, you have to have $25,000 in your account to be able to sit there and just day trade all day long. Back then, before that rule came out, I could have $1,000 in my account, and I could sit there and trade eBay. I could trade a penny stock. I could sit there and just back and forth day trade all day long. And then they came out with a stupid rule that you had to have $25,000. Well, why'd they do that? Because they wanted the little guy out of the market. Little guy was affecting them, and they wanted him out of the market so they can control it. Bitcoin's 24/7, 7 days a week, except for on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and that is futures. And they close at, I want to say it's 3 Central Time on Friday. They reopen at, I want to say it's 5. It's either, unless they changed it, 5 or 5:30. Okay, yeah, so calls and puts. So let's say, again, we're talking about Microsoft. And let's say the current price of Microsoft is at $40. Okay? You have what's called a call option, which is that you think price is going higher. Okay? And when you go in to trade it, you can bet and say, you know what, I think Microsoft is probably going to be at 41 before the option expires. Okay, and there's different expirations that you could do. The weekly expiration, you could do a monthly expiration, which means you could bet way into the future, given on that. So I could sit there and say, you know what, Microsoft is at 40 right now, and here we are March 2nd. But you know what? I really think this thing got beat up so bad that I think it's going to be at $60 by the time May gets around. Okay? You can actually place that bet with a call option. And you can go vice versa. If you think, hey, Microsoft really doesn't look good, I think by May it's going to be really bad, and I think it's going to go down to about 35. You can place that bet as well. But you have to remember that when you do an option, the price of it actually it can deteriorate in value, okay, given time, right? And you pay a certain price for that call or that put option. They're cheap, okay? They're cheap to buy depending on your price. The closer you are to current price, the higher the option price is. Okay? Exactly. That's what it's called, decay. Price decay. That's exactly what it's called. But yeah, you can sit there and place bets on that all day long. I'll show you one real quick. Let's go over here. Here's one I placed a bet on. And we'll see if it plays out or not. See that? That's the volatility index of the market, right? The stock market. And I'll get my highlighter on here. I did this, actually did 2 separate trades on it. All right, so this is the volatility index of the stock market. Obviously, when price is high, the more fear that you have in the market, right? And when things are just low down here, usually the market's going higher to sideways, right? You get these little spikes, and that's when you get a little bit of fear in the market. Well, look over here. We got big time fear that took the VIX all the way to 50. Now, what does that mean? Let's go over and look at a weekly chart. What usually happens when VIX gets up to these levels up here? Do you think it comes crashing down? The market it corrects, but then volatility kind of disappears, right? It's like the market's found its bottom. There may be a little bit of short-term stuff going on, but eventually it finds its bottom. And then the VIX just kind of comes right back down to the mean. So when price was, I didn't obviously catch the exact top, but in this area, and I want to say I got some here, I want to say it was around 35. I got puts because I think the VIX is coming all the way back down here. And I went out to May. All right. I think by May that the VIX, and I'll probably sell before then because as price starts coming back in, then I'll probably, hopefully take some profits by then. But I went all the way out to May on puts on the VIX. And it's almost like it was kind of like a lottery deal, really. But I got to looking at this and I was like, you know what? That looks like a logical move. I just think this whole coronavirus thing got blown way out of proportion and way too much fear in the market. And we're starting to see the market trying to put in a short-term bottom. And hopefully by that time the VIX will be down in here. But then after, it doesn't mean it can't, do something like this. Right? I just want to see it come down here. Yeah, the VIX, it's the volatility index. That's the volatility index of the stock market. The higher this goes, usually the lower price is, right? And you can see back here, things got really volatile around election time, right? Prior to, got really volatile right after Trump took over, and then all of a sudden the market took off and volatility decreases. Because the market just, you wouldn't see like 1,000-point moves. You wouldn't see 500-point moves. You just see, hey, the Dow was up 200 points today, and everybody's going, oh, okay, well, whoop-de-doo, it was up 1% or less than 1%. Volatility. You're going to get spikes here and there when people think, oh, that's the top. But no. And let's go look at it on monthly. I mean, right here was the financial crisis. Okay? That was the bottom of the market right there. Now, could the VIX get up here? Sure it can. But I'm just not betting that we're going to see 90 on the VIX. I'm just not betting that way, right? I'm just thinking that way outside Bollinger Bands on this move has got to pull back in. All right. And if I go back to a daily, it has pulled back in. Slow stochastic is way oversold. Okay, doesn't mean it can't pull back and then go a little higher, but my guess is by the time May rolls around, I'm going to be looking at price back here in the 20s. And I've got a lot of time on my side. Okay. Hopefully that helps. Now, would it have been nice to, sure it would have been nice. And I actually looked at this too. I didn't execute. But that's my fault on the SPX. Right in here, after that gap, I was thinking about buying some puts, right? And I was like, this thing could be way overblown, blah, blah. It was a big percentage drop. I just didn't think it was going to make that drop. And so I backed off, and I was like, well, if I'd have bought, in this area right in here, if I'd bought, on this our SPX puts all the way down to 28.60, that'd have been a lot of money. But I didn't do it. Didn't follow through on that one. Thought it would take a little more time. All right. What else can we look at? Change my focus here back to the black here. There we go. All right, think up some chart requests. I'll be back in 1 minute. I have to use the restroom. All right, I am back. Any chart requests or questions, guys? Questions or chart requests? Kick knowledge on the Greeks, yeah. I think Fibonacci is just so fascinating. You know, it's crazy, absolutely crazy. What are Greeks? I'm not too much into the Greeks on options. No, I didn't get that far. Didn't get that far. I tried to keep it simple. I just went with calls, puts. Occasionally, you can do, I think, what's called a call credit spread. That's where you have to kind of like, you do one put in one direction and two calls in the other direction. So it's almost like a hedge. But even those can be kind of tricky. So, those are for more experienced option traders. I'm just I just try to keep it simple. Do I have trade gossip? Like, do I know of something? No, I don't. Like insider info? No, unfortunately, I don't. Can't do that. That's illegal. Wouldn't ever, because they'll do anything to get a smart or a little guy out, right? You got less than. I don't even know if I want to put a dollar amount on it. They're just trying to get everybody out so they can control the whole darn thing. But we'll see who wins in the long term, right? Okay, so we looked at Litecoin, we looked at Bitcoin. Let's see. XTZ Link. I think we went over all those. Yeah, I could tell you a lot of stories. Oh, I'll tell you a funny one. So back when me and this was back in the late 90s, maybe very early 2000s. There was probably there was probably 5 of us that used to day trade penny stocks. Okay, and you got to remember, this is back before cell phones, any of that stuff. But there was a deal called Hear Me, where if you had a microphone and speakers, you could sit there and dial up and connect to your buddies and actually sit there and have conversations. And basically, our philosophy back then was, we would run a scanner on the entire penny stock market. And this is how we made money, is that we would look at stuff that was anything that was over 20% down, okay? We zeroed in on it like a bee, like a bee to a flower. We were like sitting there going, okay, so this thing's down 20%. We would all get in, right, and buy some shares of that penny stock, because normally what's going to happen, anything down that big is going to bounce, right? And that was our plays, was bounce plays. When we were investing for the long term, we were just looking at it for a day trade or to get out the next day. Well, it just so happens, and I can't remember the ticker, it's been so long ago, but I was probably the smallest, person with, as far as cash wise in the group, one of the smallest. But the guy that was the biggest in our group had probably over $1 million. And so we all started piling into this thing, and we're sitting there thinking, okay, it's going to bounce, bounce, bounce. And the darn thing kept going lower. I mean, so we bought in some shares when it was 20 or 22% down. And then it dropped all the way to 30. We added some more. It kept dropping, never bounced. It dropped all the way to 40. I think it got to 50% down. And I want to say that I was down at one point. I think I was down on this stock. I was probably down about $10,000 or $15,000. But that's minuscule compared to the guy that was the biggest in our group, and he was down, if I remember right, he was down probably $100,000 at one point. And a really good friend of mine was down about 50. And it was like, oh my God. We were like sitting there just praying that this thing would bounce back some so we could get the hell out. And every one of it, we didn't make money on this thing. We did not make money. But we did gain back some of our losses. So we didn't take as big of a hit. But I've got to tell you, man, I was sweating bullets that day. I can promise you that. I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, what the hell? And that was very scary. I mean, that was scary. And then, I'm sure I've told this story a couple of times. So back when the .com bubble burst, okay, and you guys hear me talk about being a bullish person, and I don't trade the short side very much. Well, I'm going to tell you why. And I shouldn't have looked at it this way, but I was pretty ballsy back in the day. And so when the .com, my loss on that one, oh gosh, I can't remember. It was probably $4,000, maybe $3,000 or $4,000, something like that. If I remember right, it was, I didn't get close to break even. But anyway, when the .com crash happened, penny stocks died. So we're all sitting there looking at other things to do, and each of us kind of went our own separate way, and I started trading the NASDAQ, and then I got hooked on futures. And so I was trading the futures one day, and I got really pretty good. I was doing okay at it, doing really good. And I was actually doing better shorting, because I was shorting the futures back then, because the market was going down. So it was a lot easier to play it that way. And so I'm sitting there, and and I think it was actually mentioned on CNBC one day. They were talking about when the Fed, like they did, was it yesterday? They did an intra-meeting before the meeting happened, right? This is like their meeting is supposed to be next week or the week after. That's when they usually either make a decision on rates, right? Either increase, stay the same, or lower them. Well, there's only been 4 or 5 times in the Fed's history that they've done a rate cut before the meeting, right? Before they announced a meeting. They just came out during the middle of the day and said, hey, the market's doing this. We're going to drop rates, whatever. So I'm sitting there, and I did not have a stop loss at the time, because I was just so confident. I was like, I'm sitting there, and the markets are down. I think the ES, the Dow, or the S&P futures were down. I can't remember the exact. All I know is I was up $3,000 at the time, and I'm sitting there looking at the screen, watching the charts, kind of keeping my eye on the TV. Go up, get a drink, and I come back, and I'm looking at my $3,000 gain turn into a $3,000 loss instantly. And I'm like, what in the hell just happened? And I see on CNBC, I had it on, and it was like the Fed just decided to cut interest rates. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And so they cut interest rates prior to their announced meeting, which took everybody off guard. And of course, when the Fed cuts interest rates, guess what? The market goes up, right? And so my short position is sitting there turning into a loss. And so I'm just sitting there watching this, and price I keep losing more and more and more. And all of a sudden I was like, I just got out. I took my loss. But what really ticked me off was that the very next day, the market was actually down lower than when I sold out. So if I had just held that short, and I'm sure maybe I could have got a margin call if I'd have held it, but it just depends on circumstances. But I ended up bailing on that position. If I just held it, I would have made money. Probably would have got back even more than what I was making because it went lower than the price where I was shorted at. So that was one instance. And then I was trading, was it, I think I was trading was it the futures again? Yeah, it was. And, this has been a few years back, but Japan came out with some news or something and I was short, and it was like right after I clicked the button to short it, right? And before I could even get my stop loss in, Japan announced some news like within a split second, and my position was down $2,000 or $3,000 again. And I'm sitting there going, holy crap, really? So I don't know. The shorting thing, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people, you can make money at it and it's all this and that, but your timing's got to be just perfect, and you got to watch out for margin calls and all that stuff. So anyway, that's my story on that stuff. All right. Any questions or chart requests, guys? I'm going to give it about a 5-minute call if y'all don't. I'm going to go eat some dinner. Hopefully everybody got something out of this tonight, and just keep an eye on the areas I talked about, right? We're just kind of chopping around right now. Maybe tomorrow we'll get a big move higher, or we break the trend line. Okay. All right. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here a little early, and appreciate everybody for coming in. If you're new to the channel, just hit the subscribe button or the like button. That would help out a lot. And I'll try to be around a little bit later. If not, I will. You're welcome. I will just plan on seeing everybody tomorrow. Y'all have a great evening, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, guys.